My name is Captain David Cole. I'm 37 years old, and I've spent the last 12 years serving in the United States Army. I've led search and rescue ops in Kandahar, trained local forces in Mosul, and walked my squad through firefights I still see in my sleep. I've never missed a mission briefing, never lost a man under my direct command, and until that morning, I believed the chain of command was sacred. We were in Afghanistan, inside a forward ops tent just east of Bagram. The heat had already curled the maps on the wall, and I was mid-brief, walking my team through the next extraction window. Then Colonel Reeves stepped in. He wasn't supposed to be there. He hadn't been involved in planning, hadn't reviewed our protocols. Still, he walked up to the front like he owned the dirt beneath our boots. Without looking at me, he cut me off. Said there'd been changes in leadership and I was being relieved of operational command effective immediately. Just like that. One sentence, flat tone, in front of my unit. I stood there holding the laser pointer, still mid-sentence, my voice stuck in my throat. The guys stared at me like they didn't understand what they were hearing. Neither did I. I had to stop myself from speaking. I wasn't about to challenge an order in front of enlisted men, but my hands were shaking, and my heart felt like it dropped straight through my chest plate. Reeves didn't explain, just nodded once and told Lieutenant Harlan to take over the briefing. Then he walked out without another word. I don't remember much of what happened next. I handed Harlan my notes and left the tent before my knees gave out. Outside, the sun felt hotter than usual, like the whole sky was burning down. I leaned against a Humvee and tried to breathe. That morning, I'd been preparing for an extraction run. By lunch, I was a sidelined officer with no command and no explanation. My father served in the Marines. 2 tours in Vietnam raised me on discipline, faith, and doing what's right even when no one's looking. My mom taught middle school history and used to tell me that leadership meant listening first. I carried both of them with me into every deployment. I believed that if I did the right thing, the system would protect me. Turns out, I was wrong. Reeves was new, transferred in from a different division, someone who'd never set foot in our zone until that week. Rumors said he'd pulled favors to get his stars. He didn't care about the mission. He cared about numbers, optics, and keeping his record clean. And I'd made the mistake of telling him what he didn't want to hear. I flagged a logistics report the day before. Something wasn't adding up with our fuel resupply costs. I asked questions, sent a quiet memo to the compliance officer. I didn't go public. I followed the protocol, but Reeves found out. And the next day, I got benched like a rookie who missed curfew. The silence from command after that was louder than any mortar round I've ever heard. No clarification, no investigation, just a reassignment to a desk job inside the wire. My team didn't say much, but I could see it in their faces. They knew something was wrong, they just didn't know how deep it went. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Reeves wanted control, and I'd made the fatal error of choosing integrity over convenience. They thought they could push me out quietly, shame me into disappearing. But what they really did was give me a reason to start paying attention. When Colonel Reeves took over command, it didn't happen with a bang. No speeches, no formal introductions, just a short notice over comms and a change of names on the morning operations board. My former CO, Colonel Mendel, was gone before most of us could say goodbye. We heard he'd been reassigned to a logistics unit back home, but nobody seemed to have details. Reeves showed up the next day with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He praised our unit's numbers, called us a model team. On the surface, he was polite, but it was the kind of politeness that made your skin itch. Everything about him felt rehearsed. His questions never dug into performance. They danced around structure and control. The first thing he did was sit in on our weekly strategy review. He didn't say much, just watched, took notes, and nodded at all the right times. But by the next week, 2 of my mission briefings had been pulled from the schedule without warning. When I asked why, I got vague replies about shifting priorities and the need to spread leadership. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he had a different leadership style. Maybe he needed time to get a feel for the unit. But then I noticed he was spending more time with Harlan, pulling him into meetings I used to lead, delegating reports directly to my junior officers without looping me in. One by one, my points of contact were getting rerouted. I started hearing about decisions I wasn't part of. Missions I used to oversee were getting reassigned at the last minute. When I pushed back, I was told it was all above board, standard restructuring. I knew it wasn't, but nothing was ever written. Nothing I could hold in my hand, just shifts. Quiet, constant, calculated. The tension wasn't explosive. It was slow and suffocating. Like being buried an inch at a time, I'd catch Reeves watching me sometimes during unit debriefs, not evaluating, measuring. It wasn't about trust. It was about control. I knew something was off. I just didn't know how far it would go. Not yet. The meeting was called last minute. Reeves sent word through his aide that he wanted a quick sit-down to go over the last recon op. I didn't think much of it at first. Just grabbed the after-action report and walked into his office like I had a dozen times before with my last CO. He didn't look up when I entered, just pointed to the seat across from him and tapped a pen on the edge of the report. He started talking about optics, about how high command was already on edge over our region's numbers. Said this latest mission didn't need to look worse than it had to. I asked him what he meant. He leaned back, folded his arms, and said the casualty report needed a trim. 3 injuries, not 5. Cut the equipment loss in half. Damage was relative, he said. I didn't answer right away. I just looked down at the paper in front of me. Every number on that page represented something real. Men, machines, time we couldn't get back. I told him I wouldn't do it. I said we don't get to reframe losses just because they're inconvenient. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. Just said maybe I wasn't understanding the broader goals of the command strategy. I said maybe I didn't want to. There was a long pause. Then he reached out, flipped the report shut, and said it was disappointing to see a senior officer so inflexible. That was the word he used. Inflexible. Like truth was a suggestion. I stood up, told him the numbers would stand as written. If he wanted them changed, he'd have to sign it himself. He didn't stop me from leaving, just watched me go. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't on his team. I was a problem to be managed, a risk to his narrative. And risks like me don't last long when people like him are running the story. They didn't make a scene. No formal reprimand, no hearings. Just an email from personnel moving me to a logistics post 2 provinces east, effective immediately. It read like a promotion on paper. Something about broadening experience and enhancing cross-functional understanding. But we all knew what it was. The new assignment meant no missions, no briefings, no leadership. I went from commanding combat units to counting spare parts and signing off fuel receipts. They stuck me in a prefab office beside the motor pool. My new team was small, good folks, mostly junior. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't volunteer much. At first, I kept my head down, did the job, took inventory seriously, checked every shipment, flagged every mismatch. That part was easy. What took discipline was keeping my mouth shut when I saw the numbers. Orders signed but never fulfilled. Fuel allocations that didn't match logs. Equipment marked as destroyed that I'd seen working days earlier. It wasn't just sloppiness, it was patterned, intentional. A reshuffling of costs and damage across sectors. Stuff that would clean up quarterly performance without fixing a thing. I started logging everything, not in the main system, on my own secure drive, daily summaries, screenshots, internal memos. I kept backup copies on 2 encrypted thumb drives and mailed one to my brother back in Colorado, just in case. Reeves didn't mention me again, but his name kept showing up in authorizations, approving transfers, reclassifications, timelines that didn't line up. He had reach, even out here. The more I saw, the more it clicked. This wasn't about me. I was just the one dumb enough to say no out loud. Most nights, I stayed late in the office. Not to catch up, to connect dots. Quietly, slowly, I started building a map. Who signed what, when, and where it went after. A dozen inconsistencies turned into 50, then 100. I wasn't even angry anymore, just focused. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not even my old crew. It wasn't time. I needed more. A bigger picture. Proof no one could bury. I'd already seen what happened when you speak out too early. Reeves wanted silence, wanted compliance. He didn't think anyone would still be watching from the shadows. That was his mistake. I wasn't trying to get even. I was trying to stop the rot. Piece by piece, I was getting closer, and when the right moment came, I'd be ready. It started with a message routed through a secure channel. Short, formal, and signed by someone I'd never spoken to. Assistant Deputy for Strategic Oversight, Office of the Under-Secretary of Defense. It asked for a call. No subject, no agenda. Just a time and a number. I almost didn't answer. Thought maybe it was a mistake. But the voice on the other end wasn't confused. She introduced herself, rank and all, then said something that stopped me cold. "We've been watching your record, Captain." She didn't mean discipline reports or evals. She meant everything. The denial, the reassignment, the pattern of data trails I'd been stitching together from my desk in the desert. She said she needed someone with integrity and first-hand experience. Someone who understood how these games got played from the inside. Then she told me about the task force. A small team, off books, reporting directly to oversight at the Pentagon. Their mission was to expose systemic fraud and rebuild the frameworks that had been gutted over time. They weren't looking for yes men. They were looking for firebreaks. I didn't say yes right away. Just listened. Let the words settle. Then I asked the only thing that mattered. Why me? Her voice didn't waver. Because you said no when it counted. That was enough. I packed the next morning. Officially, I was reassigned again. Quiet paperwork, standard language. But this time, it wasn't exile. It was leverage. The files I'd been collecting came with me. Every byte logged, time-stamped, cross-referenced. They didn't ask for proof. But I gave it to them anyway, not to brag, to show how deep it went. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was bracing for the next hit. I felt aligned, seen, validated. The things Reeves thought were victories were never his. Every demotion, every brush-off, every slight he thought buried me deeper just made the record louder. Now I had reach. Now I had cover. And I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to dismantle the whole shell game. One forged number at a time. Here's the requested part written to your specifications. The room wasn't huge, but it held weight. Brass on the walls, seals inlaid on the table, and 3 people in uniform sitting behind nameplates that mattered. I walked in with a tablet. No attorney, no paper trail to hide behind. I didn't need a speech. I had truth and timestamp data. Reeves was already seated. Clean uniform, tight haircut, and a smirk that said he thought this was theater. His eyes scanned me like I was late to a performance he'd already won. But I saw the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped against the folder in front of him like he wasn't sure which page to flip to. The tribunal chair spoke first, laying out the purpose of the session. Internal review, possible misconduct. Pending investigation into discrepancies in deployment data and command decisions. I waited until they finished, then I tapped the screen once and mirrored the tablet to the main monitor. My first slide wasn't dramatic, just a logistics summary. But the metadata told the real story. Timestamp mismatches, version inconsistencies, backdated approvals. I spoke clearly, gave names, locations, digital signatures. Every slide was a nail. Every chart, a hammer. I moved on to casualty figures. Highlighted how reports were adjusted post-mission to reflect fewer injuries. Showed how certain file logs had been overwritten, only to be retrieved from backups the IT department thought no one else accessed. Reeves shifted in his seat, still quiet, but the smirk was cracking. Then I played audio. A clipped conversation from an encrypted internal channel. Reeves telling a subordinate to reframe the mission metrics to align with HQ expectations. No mention of actual losses. Just optics. The room went still. He finally spoke, trying to challenge protocol. Claimed the context was missing. That battlefield conditions require adjustments in narrative. But by then, I had already switched to financials. Procurement overspend tied directly to his authorization chain. Ghost assets. Disappearing inventories. One of the tribunal officers leaned forward, pen tapping. They asked a short question. Reeves froze. Couldn't answer. I watched the silence stretch. His face was pale now, hands still. I closed with an email, one he'd sent to a civilian contractor, authorizing non-compliant gear for field testing without review. The contractor flagged concerns. Reeves had told them to run it anyway. 2 injuries followed. No paperwork submitted. My final words were simple. This isn't personal. It's about the uniform we wear and the people who trust it. I sat down. No more to say. Reeves didn't speak again. The panel recessed for deliberation. He left the room with no eye contact, jaw clenched, steps uneven. I didn't smile, just breathed. After 12 years in service and months in exile, the truth had finally spoken louder than his power. When the dust settled, I was called back to DC. Again, this time, not for testimony. They offered me a seat at the table, not a return to command. A new role built from scratch. Senior Fellow for National Integrity, attached to the Office of Ethical Oversight. It wasn't flashy, no uniform, no ribbons, but it had reach. Real authority. A chance to design systems that flagged manipulation before it became policy. They wanted transparency tools, training programs, a network of officers and analysts committed to truth over rank. I said yes without hesitation. This wasn't about Reeves anymore. It wasn't about getting my title back. I'd seen the cracks in the foundation. I'd lived in them. Now I had a chance to pour new concrete. To build something that lasted, something that didn't need revenge to justify itself. I kept one framed photo on my new desk. My old unit, Afghanistan. Before the fallout, before I had to choose between the job and the truth. That picture reminded me what mattered, why I stood up, and why I'd never let this happen on my watch again. The lights were hot, the room full. Not just military brass, but civilian officials, contractors, analysts, press. I stood behind the podium at the National Defense Ethics Conference with one slide behind me. A live dashboard. Real-time data from every operational theater under the new integrity system we'd built. The model didn't just track numbers, it tracked patterns. Flags manipulation attempts, autologs leadership overrides. It was quiet accountability coded into the system itself. I didn't name names, didn't have to. People knew where this came from, why it existed. And when I scanned the crowd, I saw him. Reeves, no uniform, no seat up front. Just another face in the back, trying not to look bitter. I didn't pause, didn't blink. Just finished with this. Integrity isn't noise. It's what holds the silence together when the shouting stops. Then I walked off stage. My story wasn't a cautionary tale. It was a blueprint.